the health insurance specialist. Co-presented by JK Tyre Ranger Series. Stay wild at heart. Powered by NECC. Sunday ho ya Monday, roz khao ande.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, Tuesday night, your destination for news, newsmakers, talking points. The big talking point, the suspended BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma has been booked. She claims she's facing death threats. The big question, of course, hate speech and blasphemy laws. Do we need a complete review of them? Should she be arrested? Also, former Vice President Hamid Ansari, considered the foremost expert on the Islamic world in this country, will be joining me on an exclusive. Why is West Asia simmering? All that and much more in a moment. But first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. Suspended BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma summoned by the Maharashtra police on June 22nd after 3 complaints against her. Nupur's security beefed up post the terror threats. Enforcement Directorate claims to have seized several crores worth of cash and over 130 gold coins from Delhi Minister Satyendra Jain's aides. Arvind Kejriwal alleges political vendetta by the centre, accuses the government of misusing agencies. Kerala gold scam returns to haunt the Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan. Main accused Swapna Suresh alleges involvement of the Chief Minister and his family, says bags of cash were sent to his house. Chief Minister refutes the allegation. 8 accused arrested by Punjab police in the Moosewala murder plot. 9 days after the murder of the singer, Rahul Gandhi meets the family of Moosewala. Gangster Lawrence Bishnoi now denies any role in a death threat letter to actor Salman Khan. The actor in his statement says he doesn't know Goldie Brar, the gangster who claimed responsibility for the Moosewala murder. Centre amends its rules to widen the pool to include recently retired 3-star officers and serving service chiefs to be eligible for the role of the Chief of Defence Staff. British woman on holiday with husband raped at Arambol Sweetwater Beach in North Goa. Police nab a 32-year-old local man accused of the crime. World Bank cuts India's economic growth forecast to 7.5% for FY23, cites rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, geopolitical tensions behind a hampered recovery. And UK PM Boris Johnson survives a no-confidence vote from his own party over the Partygate scandal. Johnson secures support of 59% lawmakers. But the big breaking news that's coming in at the moment, 6 months after General Bipin Rawat tragically died in an air crash, the big question, who is replacing him as the Chief of Defence Staff? Well, the government has finally made a big move on the issue. The government has amended the Military Act to choose a CDS that can now involve both serving and, importantly, retired 3-star officers. That's right. The new move means that the pool of people who could succeed General Rawat, who remember lost his life 6 months ago, since then the government has not filled in that gap created. Huge speculation now, retired officers can also be chosen as the Chief of Defence Staff. Shiv Arur, my colleague, joins me at this moment on that. Shiv, what does this mean? Is there likelihood now of a retired officer becoming the next Chief of Defence Staff?
You know, Rajdeep, this announcement has set the cat among the proverbial pigeons and how among military circles, especially the veterans community, with officers of the rank of Lieutenant General, Vice Admiral, Air Marshal, who had hung up their combat boots and had receded into a, retired life, now suddenly having a shot, perhaps at the top post in the Indian military. It's been over 6 months since the death of India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat. You're absolutely right. The government did not feel the need to appoint an immediate replacement since it was a politically appointed position. But now by, amending the Army, Air Force and Navy Act and exponentially expanding the pool, from which it can actually choose. It has sent out several messages. My sense, Rajdeep, is that a decision is around the corner. That's the reason why the Gazette has actually been amended. But the interesting inclusion of retired 3-star officers, retired chiefs is one thing. They all retire at the age of 62. So the recently retired chiefs are out of the reckoning. That leaves the recently retired 3-star officers, the lieutenant generals, vice admirals and air marshals, Rajdeep. And it is in that rank that there are a large number of recent retirees who are eligible for this post. And therefore, the kind of tantalizing intrigue over who really has a shot has hit fever pitch. There are already a huge number of names that are doing the rounds on social media, as one might expect, but the kind of intrigue over this is really something that's going viral in WhatsApp groups, in military veteran groups. It's the talk of the town in the military circles.
Importantly, what you're therefore saying is possibly, and very quickly on this, a retired vice admiral or a retired lieutenant general could become chief of defense staff also. It's opened the doors for many more. Am I correct?
Potentially, Rajdeep, because, otherwise, why would the government need to specify in this Gazette amendment that, retired persons of the 3-star rank would also be eligible as long as they had not reached the age of 62. Now, lieutenant generals, vice admirals, air marshals usually retire close to 60. Chiefs retire at the age of about 62. So the 3-star rank have that age barrier for them to make them potentially eligible to become chief of defense staff. There are a lot of problems here. Do they get elevated and become, therefore senior to people who they are technically, junior to while they were in service? There are many, many questions and queries which haven't quite been clarified by this Gazette amendment just yet. So it remains to be seen how it actually happens. Right. Let's remember that even General Bipin Rawat was promoted above and over the shoulders of people who were senior to him when he became the army chief. So this government does do that.
Okay,
Rajdeep.
We'll wait and see how this plays out. Clearly an important development on that entire issue that has been hanging fire now for 6 months. Who will succeed General Bipin Rawat? Shiv Arur with that exclusive news break. Let's turn from there to our top story today, because ex-BJP spokesperson or suspended BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma continues to feel the heat over her contentious remarks on Prophet Muhammad made during a TV debate. Not only is India facing flack from West Asia, now Nupur herself has been facing, she claims, death threats. On top of it, the Maharashtra police have summoned her to record a statement after 3 cases were filed against her for hate speech. Where does this leave the case and the legal position? We'll be looking at that closely in a moment, but first, take a look at the story.
Days after making the controversial remarks on Prophet in a TV debate, Nupur Sharma is facing death threats and trolling on social media. The Delhi police has provided security to Nupur and her family after an FIR was filed on threats received by her. Terror group Ghazwatul Hind has threatened to launch strikes if the suspended spokesperson doesn't tender an apology to the entire world. Nupur has already withdrawn her statement on the Prophet. She said it was never her intention to hurt anyone's religious feelings. Nupur Sharma is also facing trouble on the legal front. The Maharashtra police have summoned her for recording her statement on June 22nd. Summons follow cases registered against her in Mumbra, in Pidoni and Thane. In Mumbra, Mohammad Gufran Khan, a teacher, is the complainant against Nupur Sharma. The former BJP spokesperson is facing charges that include hurting religious sentiments and creating division among communities. The BJP is muted in its reactions but has clarified that the party does not disrespect any religion.
सपा के बारे में कोई नहीं पूछा आज जो सपा के मेंबर ने
शफीक और रहमान पर
हाँ उन्होंने जो शब्द इस्तेमाल किए हैं शिवलिंग को लेकर उसके बारे में कोई बात नहीं करा कितने अपमानजनक शब्द हैं वो.
The opposition is calling for strict action against Nupur Sharma.
People who have been responsible for this, I think more action needs to be taken, legal action should be taken, and the ruling party can't wash its hands away by saying we've now suspended them.
Meanwhile, the global firestorm sparked by Nupur Sharma is still raging. 15 nations have condemned her statement. The Narendra Modi government has reaffirmed that India respects all religions and that the remarks were by fringe elements. Kerala Governor Arif Mohammed Khan has played down the whole controversy.
Countries who have been speaking against us for last so many years on Kashmir, even on other matters, how does it matter? People are entitled to their opinion. That is not important. We should not, India cannot bother about these small reactions.
Nupur Sharma's remark on the Prophet has sparked fights on two fronts. One, the global outrage which the government is firefighting. The other is the security threat to the former BJP leader. While Nupur Sharma's comment was in very bad taste, is the reaction getting out of proportion? Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's raise some big questions tonight then. Is the law on hate speech as it stands in this country simply too vague? Arrest or apology enough in Nupur's case? Who will speak up against these death threats? And does India need to review its blasphemy laws or need blasphemy laws at all? I'm joined by one of the country's leading legal scholars, Professor Faizan Mustafa. He is also Vice Chancellor at NALSA and a top legal voice. Also joining me is Yashovardhan Azad, former IPS officer, so we look at the policing angle. And I'm joined by Zakia Soman, women's rights activist who took on the entire issue of triple talaq. And she too claims that in the past she's faced threats of some kind or the other for the stand she's taken. But to you, Professor Mustafa, first, because let's look at blasphemy laws. Section 295A of the IPC says, deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings, insulting religion by words or by signs or by visible representation, up to 3 years in jail or fine or both. Now, in neighboring Pakistan, it can result in death. And that's pure blasphemy laws. In India, is the law vague? Does it need to be reviewed? Does it need to be relooked? And importantly, does Nupur Sharma actually fall in any way within it?
Thank you, Rajdeep. First, some 71 countries today have blasphemy laws. My personal opinion as a constitutional law teacher is that such laws have a chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression and should not be there in a modern liberal democracy. Now, even Indian Penal Code did not originally have 295A. This clause was inserted in 1927. But Chapter 15 of the Penal Code has 5 sections dealing with various aspects of blasphemy law. Pakistan, when General Ziaul Haq initiated the process of Islamization, made this law far more stringent with a mandatory death penalty if you say anything against the Holy Prophet. Now, within the Islam, Rajdeep, there is a debate. There are people who say that the Holy Quran, which mentions the capital offenses, which are just 5, does not mention blasphemy as one of the capital offense. But there are other scholars who believe that for such an offense, there has to be a death penalty. My position is that defamation of religions should not be the concern of modern liberal democracy. But hate speech should very much be on our agenda. And no one should be allowed to indulge in hate speech. Indian laws on hate speech, if implemented properly in Section 153A and 153B, would have been enough to deal with this situation.
Can I just stop you, sir? Can I just stop you for that? You are telling me, for our viewers, very importantly, you're saying Indian Penal Code does not need Section 295A as it exists. It is almost a mirror of blasphemy laws. We don't need it. 153A, where you resort to hate speech that promotes religious enmity, is enough. But what is the difference between hate speech and blasphemy? Did Nupur Sharma commit blasphemy because she mentioned the Prophet? Or is it enough to look at it as hate speech? And should she be, if at all, prosecuted under hate speech only?
You know, as the law stands today, Rajdeep, it may be covered by 295A. The point is that state at some point of time, realize that we would punish anyone who criticizes religion. And then the state said, well, we are protectors of religion. Now, we have crossed that stage. In modern democracy, I believe any blasphemy law would have a chilling effect on freedom of speech. But as law stands today, probably she is she can be charged under 295A. But what I am trying to say that increasing punishment will not help. Intensity of the punishment really does not deter. Even death penalty does not deter. It is the certainty of the punishment which deters. If more and more people are punished under 153A, it would have the desired effect. Therefore, we should use hate speech laws rather than the blasphemy laws, which I consider to be the relic of past.
Very interesting, because remember, Nupur Sharma has been booked under IPC section 295A along with sections 153A, 153B, 298 and 505 of the IPC. But Yashovardhan Azad, if what is being said by Professor Mustafa is taken to become the law in the future, the question is, will the police understand the implications of a difference between blasphemy and hate speech? The problem is the way the police acts in this country. I'll give you the example of stand-up comedian Munawar Farooqi, who along with 4 others was booked under IPC section 295A last year for allegedly making indecent remarks about Hindu deities. Now, the police is quick to seize on any aspect of the penal code because they believe that 295A will virtually ensure non-bailable offence. They'll be put in jail for a few days, as was Munawar Farooqi. Is the problem not just with the law, but with the police? Do the police in this country even know the difference between blasphemy and hate speech? And in the case of Nupur Sharma, the Maharashtra police is ruled by an opposition state, so they will be very quick to target her.
In India, of course, there is a coloring of the police investigation as per the regime they serve under, as you rightly said. And therefore, under the BJP regime, there was no cases registered against her. And in Maharashtra, cases were registered under both 153A and 295A. You're absolutely right. When it comes to any kind of such speeches, I think the police takes it very, very safely. In the sense that they'll put all the sections, but this kind of fine division between the two, I think very rarely it is perceived. In the case of Nupur Sharma, it was in a debate, and when a debate stretches on, you just tend to say anything what you feel like. It escapes from her actually. It's unfortunate that she certainly should be booked under 295A because it was really hurtful. And as far as the 153A is concerned, as far as the blasphemy laws are concerned, I'm totally against it. It doesn't make any sense at all in a modern country. And in fact, I would also say that the dictators who are ruling in the name of religion are hardly the ones who can teach India how to manage our minorities.
No, that point I take. But you seem to be suggesting that it is a deliberate and malicious act, that therefore she should be charged under 295A. Is that what you're saying, that you believe it's a fit case for that?
I think it's an offensive remark. And it's an offensive remark.
An apology not enough?
Well, if she apologizes, definitely, I think she should. In fact, I would also say that all the cases which have been registered against her in Maharashtra or other places, I don't think, because of the severe threat she faces from the hardline Islam, that she should be called even to give her statement, and they should absolutely wait till her security is absolutely foolproof, and she should be given full security. And once she has apologized, yes, then there is
I'll come to the apology question in a moment, but I want to bring in Zakia Soman, because Zakia Soman, when you took out the campaign against triple talaq, at that time, presumably there were threats to you also from fanatic groups within the Islamic community who believed that you were on the wrong track. Do you believe that in cases like this, therefore, the likes of Nupur Sharma also need to be protected? Rather than throw the law book, if you want to throw the law book at them, throw the law book in a manner that is transparent, that is not arbitrary, and that uses the existing laws effectively. Otherwise, you're creating a situation where she's got these death penalties against her, so the fear factor comes in. How do you see it?
Yeah. Before coming to that, Rajdeep, with your permission, I want to say how I wish the government of India had heeded to the protests of the Muslims and so many other non-Muslim Indians who were protesting against these offensive remarks. It is sad that we have caved into the pressure of foreign states who are not known to be democratic. So that's a very sad development. Having said that, yes, the women who fought against triple talaq faced a lot of opposition, a lot of attacks. including personal attacks.
Can you specify? Can you tell our viewers
Yes,
what kind of threats did you face?
Yes, and the fact that we were all women, made it very easy for the conservatives to go after us. So I can talk about myself and say there was a WhatsApp with my photograph, which was circulated not just in India, but it was circulated all across the world. My relatives from North America were extremely worried, and they received it before we had any clue about it. So it carried my photo and it carried my kind of a CV about my husband being from another faith background, and I married him as per Hindu rites, and I am an agent of the RSS, and my son is a self-declared atheist, and therefore I have no right to intervene in matters of quote-unquote Islamic faith. And this WhatsApp was circulated everywhere, and my photos were, updated periodically on this WhatsApp. And in fact, the Ahmedabad police and the Mumbai police both had an input about the threat which were posed to myself and all our other volunteers. We used to receive regularly dirty emails, with all kinds of nonsense written in that. We used to receive phone calls, and it was extremely difficult for our volunteers, in fact, most of whom come from socially, economically deprived backgrounds, who live in the mohallas, in the ghettos amongst Muslims. So they had to undergo a lot of pressure. They had a lot of explaining to do. We had to do a lot of, dialoguing back and forth, and to clarify our position, because at that time, in 2016, a lot of things have changed now, but at that time, we were all women who were posing a challenge to the authority of the mullah, and we were interfering within in a realm which is the realm of religion, which we were not at all qualified to interfere in according to them. So I believe even as Nupur Sharma's statement is hateful, it is offensive, it is condemnable. But just the fact that, the kind of threats which are being given to her, she should be given protection. I do
So
believe
she
that,
should be
yes,
given, I'm glad you're telling us what happened to you,
Yes.
because our viewers need to know that here is Zakia Soman, and remember, she was part of a Muslim women's rights group which was fighting against triple talaq, and she and others also faced threats at the time. Others have also faced threats. Even MF Hussain, remember, faced threats, left the country. So it is fanatics on both sides who threaten those who try to promote a certain secular value. But Professor Mustafa, if today Nupur Sharma, as she claims she is, apologizes for a statement, offensive though it be, condemnable though it be, during a TV debate, should that be enough in your view to ensure that she doesn't have to go through a prolonged period of going to courts across the country? Or do you believe she becomes a test case for seeing if Section 153A works effectively and ensures that people do not promote hate speech?
Rajdeep, I would say if we are talking of blasphemy as defamation of religions, then in any defamation, the apology is considered good enough to close that chapter. And if we follow Prophet of Islam, then he is all about mercy. He is all about forgiveness. People in his lifetime have been abusing him, and he has been forgiving them. So anyone who follows Prophet should have a big heart and forgive anybody for anything. But that is what the ideal situation is. And as you rightly said, many fanatics may not agree with.
So you're saying, in your view, an apology should be enough in a case like this?
I told you that it is a defamation of religion. If for defamation apology is good enough, here also it can be good enough. The real point is that she was, one, ignorant, and two, she intentionally did it. In fact, there is, great scholarly evidence available which proves that Bibi Aisha was not 6 years old when she was married.
Can I just prod you further? Because it involves the Prophet and a direct, in a sense, statement on the Prophet, does it make the issue even more sensitive and more difficult to handle, Professor Mustafa?
Yes, Rajdeep, because if there is some cause of Muslims, then we will definitely not accept any external interference. When OIC said something about the rights of Muslims, I also made a video, and I said that Indian Muslims have their constitution, their judiciary, and they have Hindus who fight for their rights. We don't need any organization of Islamic states. But when you say such things against the Prophet and he has followers throughout the world, then I think you are crossing the Lakshman Rekha and inviting problem. Because then it is no more an internal matter of India in which others should not interfere. Because you are hurting the religious feelings of the millions and millions of people across the globe.
You know, the fact though is, Yashovardhan Azad, that it comes back to whether the police will apply the law fairly and not arbitrarily. We had a Dharam Sansad where calls were made for killing Muslims. Person goes to jail for a few days, is out on bail, goes back and starts making the same statements. The question is, do you believe that the law is a deterrent as it stands today? Do you believe that therefore the law in a sense needs to become a deterrent and the police in a way need to act evenly, fairly across communities, whoever resorts to hate speech, including politicians who keep getting away? They don't get prosecuted in this country.
Yeah, I don't think the law needs to be strengthened. I think the police needs to be impartial and use the law effectively and impartially against all kinds of people. You know, the issue about Prophet is very, very sensitive, and the remark which Nupur made certainly would hurt every Muslim. But the reaction has been totally disproportionate, and I totally disapprove of that. She should get full protection. She should not be allowed to go to any police station to give statement. And once she has apologized, the case should be finished. I think this is the hardline Islam, and one should not take lessons from OIC countries who rule these tin pots in the name of, and they made it Islamic countries. And the last point which I want to say is, yes, the Dharam Sansads are bad, but also the remarks made against Shivling hurt not only me, who was a Shiv Bhakt, but crores of people in this country. But there are no death threats, and that was made by a professor. So I think there should be some balance. And as far as Nupur Sharma goes, her case should be closed once he offers a formal apology. And I'm very happy, Professor Mustafa said, that Islam talks of mercy, and therefore she should be forgiven.
You want to also dive into that, Zakia Soman? Should she be given mercy, to use the word as Professor Mustafa says? That is in a sense the high quality of religious beliefs.
No, so if she has apologized, she must be forgiven. But I will also say that it has to be backed by more action on the part of the BJP and on the part of the government. Because right now you are cornered and you are forced to give out an apology, but you have to walk the talk, you have to mean the apology. Not just that, the government has to do a lot to curb the kind of hate and venom which is being spewed all around against the minorities. So I think it is high time that the Prime Minister, walks his own slogan of Sabka Saath and Sabka Vikas. And I think India cannot be a world superpower or an economic superpower with this kind of religious polarization and hatred all around.
Very
so
well.
I think
It's not an isolated remark, which is the problem. And that is really, it's not just a remark that was off the cuff, because if you look at some of the remarks that have been made by various spokespersons of the ruling party, they often take this line, which is seen to be very hateful and spiteful for many. I'll give you, Professor Mustafa, a final quick word for 30 seconds. The politicians, during election time, the kind of hate speeches they resort to, they don't get arrested, if arrested very rarely. Is that the real issue? If Section 153A, as you said at the start, was used against netas, that would be the real deterrent. Put them in jail, whichever community they belong to. As I say, Hindus or Muslims, throw them into the same jail cell. Would that change?
Definitely, definitely, because politicians make such statements to win votes. If people decide to vote against them, that would be much greater deterrent than putting them behind the bars for a day. I am not a great believer of deterrence theory of punishment, Rajdeep. But ultimately, the politicians need to set the agenda. Unfortunately, today, the agenda seems to be of hate rather than of love and harmony.
Those are very, very salutary words. I hope someone out there is listening. You resort to hate speech, then you must be willing to pay the cost. And it is not enough to have an apology. You've actually got to show that you genuinely want to have a change in heart. And maybe we need to start with our netas being booked under Section 153. I appreciate my guest joining me here on my talking point tonight. let's turn from there to our big interview today, because the Islamic world is continuing to simmer over the Prophet remark. Across West Asia and several other parts of the world, countries are protesting against what was said. Now, while that happens, I thought I would reach out to someone who is seen as the foremost authority in this country when it comes to West Asia in particular, and looks closely at the Islamic world. The former Vice President of the country, Hamid Ansari, spoke to me on Islam, this controversy, and plenty more. Take a look. As the controversy continues to snowball over remarks made by a BJP spokesperson since suspended over the Prophet and continue to convulse the Islamic world in particular, I'm joined by a very special guest, the former Vice President and an expert and authority on West Asia, where he served for several years, Mr. Hamid Ansari. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Ansari. How do you see this controversy, particularly in West Asia, where several of the countries have protested and condemned the Indian government and India also?
It is not only West Asia. It is Indonesia, it is Iran, and countries all across the board. You see, the point is every faith has got certain touch points. Every faith, irrespective of what the faith is. In the case of Muslims, the personality of the Prophet of Islam is very, very important, and references to it always have to be very carefully done. So when somebody goes out of his or her way and say rude things about the person, I mean, mind you, these are historic personalities 1500 years back, and yet the sensitivity is very great.
The reason I'm asking you this is, A, there are those who will say that West Asia is no one to lecture us, or indeed the Islamic world. Many of these countries do not respect human rights themselves. Who is Pakistan, for example, a serial offender of minority rights to lecture India? Who is Afghanistan, ruled by the Taliban, to lecture India on minority rights or human rights? How does that fit in with what you just said, respect the sentiments of people?
You see, two things. There are sentiments of followers of a faith. I'm not talking of nationals of a country. I'm talking of followers of a faith. Now, faith is a unifying thing.
No, effectively, then you're talking about wider Islamic brotherhood, as if anything said in India by a party spokesperson in a TV studio then enrages the entire Islamic world.
Because it affects every Muslim. The sentiment-wise, it affects every Muslim. Every Muslim, practicing, non-practicing, whether it is in Africa, whether it is in the Arab world, whether it is in Asia, where the great majority of Muslims actually live. 70% of Muslims of the world are in 4-5 Asian countries: Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, China, Pakistan, maybe Turkey, Iran.
But isn't this politics of offended sentiments a very dangerous track to go on? Because tomorrow there could be Hindus in this country who will say, for example, when M.F. Hussain, the great painter, would painted in a manner that was seen to be offensive to Hindu gods and goddesses. He got security in Qatar, the same Qatar which has been the first country in a way to stand up and protest against India.
No, people felt offended. Mr. Hussain accepted that, and he paid the price for it. So the question is, in matters of faith, you have to be very careful, very sensitive. It's not a question of correctness in logical terms.
You don't accept the argument that this is an overreaction, to blame virtually, to suggest that India itself, to use the OIC statement, India must address incidents of defamation and insult to Prophet, and then goes on to say, the OIC statement, the growing spate of hatred and defamation of Islam in India, cites the hijab ban, bulldozers, alleged violence against Muslims. One statement made, unfortunate, slanderous by a party spokesperson in a TV studio should not lead to this kind of wide condemnation of India as a country, surely.
Wouldn't you consider that this is something which has been happening over time? People are not talking about it, but it's happening over time. We've seen it happen in different parts of the country. You and I live here, so we know. For example, recently elections in the biggest state of the country, UP, great efforts were made, to assume provocative positions. It is to the credit of the minority community in UP that they did not get provoked. And it is to the credit of their leadership or religious leadership to say to the public, don't get provoked. So this is not something which is happening suddenly. It has been happening over time. We've seen it happen over 10 years or more.
You seem to be suggesting that there is a built-in Islamophobia.
Well,
is that what you're going to call it, or are you saying that it's gone well beyond that as well? Is that what you're suggesting? And are you suggesting that this has only happened in the last 8 years after the BJP came to power? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, if you are in power, you can do a lot of things which you don't do when you are not in power. So I'm not saying I know the term exists way back in the election manifesto of the BJP in 2009 and also in the election manifesto of 2014, civilizational consciousness. But the question is, what do you mean by civilizational consciousness? If you interpret it in a very narrow sort of way, then you end up with what is today being called Hindutva, which all learned people say it has nothing to do with Hinduism. It is a political ideology with a certain kind of orientation attached to it.
But I still come back to it, Hamid Ansari. There will be those who will say that in the name of Islamophobia, countries with deplorable human rights records are using this one instance to target an entire government. The Modi government says, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas.
Yes.
The Modi government says that when we give an Ujjwala gas cylinder, we don't discriminate between Hindus and Muslims. Our welfare schemes are targeted towards all.
Correct.
Our critics are determined to somehow suggest that we are demonizing Muslims. And then along comes an instance like this. And they say these are fringe elements. Why are you targeting an entire government or an entire country?
Two things. You would use the expression, or you quoted somebody's expression, fringe elements.
Yes, the government of India in fact suggested they were fringe elements.
But they were not fringe elements. These are spokesmen of the ruling party, and not just any spokesman, an important spokesperson. She herself has said that she has been in it from the word go. If you are a Delhi man, you would know that she has a background at Delhi University, etc., etc., etc. But besides the point, this is not fringe. This is a hardcore reaction, except that in one case out of maybe 100, it provoked. The wrong word was used, the wrong expression was used. You see, the short answer would have been, our governments have this problem all the time with each other. This offends me, that offends me. You talk it out. You mention it quietly. You call in the ambassador, you say, not good, etc., etc. Why is it that this has happened in the same week as the report to the Congress by the US Secretary of State? And the language that the report uses, a country of special concern.
You are suggesting, Mr. Ansari, that there is a link between the reaction that we are seeing from the Islamic world and what the US Secretary of State Blinken said in the context of concern over human rights violations in India. You're drawing a direct relation. You're suggesting that this is against the backdrop that we must see this as a growing concern globally, is it?
There is a growing concern globally. I'm not saying it is backdrop. But you know and I know that year by year, US embassies all over the world collect information of interest to them. So our friends on Shanti Path or anywhere else in the country, they collect this information. But at what stage do they reach the conclusion that this is a matter of mention to the Congress? Particular concern, mark the words, English language.
So the government of India, as they have responded to the OIC very strongly, says that this is motivated, misleading and mischievous comments. In fact, they've called it unwarranted, narrow-minded and in a way communal. So there seems to be a belief in the Indian state that this is an attempt being made by the Islamic world to unfairly target India. This is a country where over the years Muslims have been treated with great respect. You became the Vice President of India. President Abdul Kalam, on whose road, the road on which we are sitting and chatting is named after him, became the President of India. We use the instance of a BJP spokesperson to suddenly suggest that Muslims are in danger in India, are being reduced to second-class citizens. Are we exaggerating, overreacting?
No, look, you mentioned OIC or Islamic organization.
Yes.
I have my own views on that, and those are not views of yesterday. I have had these views for a very long time.
What are they?
We were founder members and we were thrown out thanks to our good neighbors. And we should have maintained that position. But then, out of the blue, suddenly the foreign minister of India, the late Mrs. Swaraj,
Sushma Swaraj.
yeah, goes and attends an OIC meeting. I was aghast, personally. Why should
you see the OIC as a communal organization?
No, I don't see OIC as a communal organization. OIC is only one of those multiple organizations of countries which come together to push a particular point of view. I've been ambassador to UN, so I know the multiplicity of organizations that exist. OIC has meaningless except for what the members do or don't do. So OIC was until very recently totally dominated by our good neighbors across the borders, totally dominated by the Saudis, and then this relationship inside keeps going up and down. Sometimes the Saudis are heavier, sometimes the Turks are heavier, sometimes the Indonesians are heavier, Pakistanis keep trying all the time. But they are very selective, they are very political. Nobody would say anything of what might have happened elsewhere, let's say in China, for example.
That's exactly what I was going to come to. In China, for example, the Muslim population, the Uyghur population there has been targeted,
very much
has been victimized.
Very much so. OIC has kept quiet.
OIC has kept quiet. Yes. Many of the same countries which today are protesting to India over the statement of the TV spokesperson have kept quiet when it comes to China.
But you tell me, right, David, which are the countries which are protesting? Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, just in West Asian region. With each one of them, over the last few years, we have had a remarkably warm relationship with each one of them. Some of them have awarded the Prime Minister. Prime Minister has visited most of them, if not all. So what has suddenly gone wrong? They're surely not enemies. We have an excellent trading relationship with them. We have good political understanding. I mean, where else would you get a wanted man in a jail in Saudi Arabia returned to India? Except through cooperation at a level amongst intelligence agencies, which doesn't happen normally.
Which is precisely the point, Mr. Ansari. Over the last 8 years, the Modi government's achievements has been this reach out to the Gulf and West Asia.
I say it, absolutely remarkable. I've worked for a very long time in West Asia. I know things when things were difficult, when they would be less than friendly, occasionally hostile also. And yet things have changed over time. It hasn't changed in last 8 years. It has been changing. Dr. Manmohan Singh went there a long time back. Srimati Indira Gandhi went there. So things have changed.
So they've changed for the better in terms of diplomatic relations. We've got a stronger economic relationship with all the countries in the region. We are signing bilateral trade agreements. And yet when it comes to this one instance, suddenly you've got India being seen as a country which is demonizing Muslims, is responsible for spreading hatred against Muslims. Reconcile these two.
Well, you tell me, These are countries when nobody says they are democratic countries. They are autocratic. Forms of autocracy are there. So if something happens there, and that too at a politically expressible manner, it happens with the approval of the autocrats, isn't it? So if something happens to the government of Qatar, it has the approval at some stage, not at some stage. It happens in Kuwait, same thing. Happens in Abu Dhabi, same thing. Saudi Arabia, same thing. So the point to note is, as I would as a professional note, that these protests are indicative of a concern at the political level, and they have therefore to be tackled politically.
Mr. Ansari, in conclusion then, what's the way forward? Because there are those who are today threatening violence against Nupur Sharma. She has been given extra security. There are those who are saying arrest her right away, imprison her. What's your view on this? How do you resolve sensitive issues, as you call them, in a manner that we can actually move forward?
By a legal method, nothing else. It doesn't matter whether this lady committed the offense or this gentleman committed the offense. If they committed the offense, let the law take its course. You see, as I said it, there are two ways about it, and both have to move together. One is the path of law, whatever the law dictates. But the other is the political path. The leadership has to follow the political path also. Why is it that, this incident which has happened in the countries of the Persian Gulf and elsewhere, why is it that no political leader in it, of the ruling government, has said anything about it? Why is it that the foreign minister has not spoken? Why is it that the prime minister, with all the stature of the prime minister and of this prime minister, with his relationship with the ruling class in those countries, has not spoken? This is not accidental. These things don't happen like that. You can't leave it to the official spokesman of the Ministry of External Affairs. He'll say all the right things. But there comes a time when saying the right thing is not enough. Because a spokesman to spokesman, foreign secretary to foreign secretary, is of no consequence in these matters.
At a personal level, therefore, do you still feel optimistic about the future? As a former vice president, as a proud Indian citizen of this country, do you feel still optimistic that the ideals of 1947, of 1950 will be preserved?
Oh yes, I am optimistic. I'm an old man.
फिर सुबह होगी?
हाँ, सुबह होगी, बिल्कुल होगी. रात होगी तो सुबह भी होगी. No two views about it, because, mind you, all said and done, the majority of population in this country still thinks sanely, isn't it? It doesn't matter what language I speak. It may be Tamil, it may be Assamese or anything else. But I have to have that approach, which is a typically Indian approach, and a special Indian approach of accommodation of diversity. To say that I tolerate is simply not enough. I don't have to tolerate. Tolerate is a negative term. I have to accept. I have a fraternal tie with you. You are my brother. I am your brother.
Mr. Hamid Ansari, appreciate your joining me and talking to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajdeep. Thank you very much.
If we could only build on that great word used by Dr. Ambedkar in the Constitution, fraternity, brotherhood. That's what we need in this country a little bit more of. Harmony, not hate. Think about it. Let's take a break. On the other side, our Only in India story. It comes from Jodhpur in Rajasthan. You're watching the news today. News with knowledge, without the noise. Back in a moment.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171. India's #1 political reporter.
Defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% pure prime time. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching.
With 7 more arrests, the plot to kill Sidhu Moosewala has become even more clear. But the key is held by a guy called Sandeep alias Kekra. That's a Hindi word for crab. Why is he called that? We're going to try and find out because his story is really unsettling. He posed as a fan outside Moosewala's residence, took a selfie with the pop star, and then apparently dialed the people who shot and killed the singer. I'm going to piece it together for you, decoding the blood trail that's just gotten much darker on India First at 10 p.m.
Let's turn to another of our headline stories tonight. The Salman Khan threat plot is unraveling every day. Police say the letter threatening to kill the actor and his father Salim Khan was found by cleaning staff at the Bandra Promenade. 10 teams of the Mumbai Police are now probing the case, scanning through 200 CCTV cameras around the Bandra bandstand. What's the latest? Take a look.
A reigning Bollywood superstar facing death threat from the same gang that killed singer Moosewala through a chilling handwritten note. Cops say the letter threatening to kill Salman and his father Salim Khan was found by a cleaning staff at the Bandra Promenade. The FIR lodged earlier mentioned that Salim Khan's bodyguard Shrikant had found the letter on the bench next to the actor's luxury condo. 10 teams of the Mumbai Police are probing the case and are scanning through 200 CCTV cameras around Bandra bandstand. Statements of Salman Khan and Salim Khan, along with their bodyguards, have been recorded by the Mumbai Police. The letter exclusively accessed by India Today said, "Aapka Moosewala hoga," to the star and his writer father. The murder threat letter was signed LB and GB, possibly gangsters Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar. Gangsters who claimed that they ordered the Moosewala murder. Gangster Lawrence Bishnoi, however, denied all allegations of his involvement, telling Delhi police during his grilling that he did not give the recent death threat. Bishnoi had, however, threatened to kill Salman in 2018, prompting a retort from the star.
जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा सलमान खान का करेंगे मारेंगे ही जाएंगे जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा इनको अभी तो मैंने कुछ किया ही नहीं अभी नहीं मतलब कोई इन्वॉल्व कर रहे हैं
जब भी कोई कमिटमेंट करो तो पॉजिटिव करना नेगेटिव नहीं करना और शिकार टाइगर जैसे शिकार कोई नहीं करता है ना ये सबको पता है
Not taking any chance, cops have beefed up security of the Khans.
The police has also clarified that it can be a mischievous act. In this case, they have recorded Salman Khan's statement and they have not expressed doubt on anybody. But still, Mumbai Police is looking for gang members of Bishnoi gang in Maharashtra to verify whether it was a threat letter or mischief by some individual. With camera person Samir Shanbag, Mustafa Sheikh for India Today.
Salman Khan, never far away from the news. We hope he stays safe. Let's turn at the end to our Only in India story. It comes from Rajasthan's Jodhpur, where a 71-year-old doctor, Dr. Dhariwal, prescribes a little shake of the leg along with medicines. He's now fondly called a dancing doctor by the locals. Here's our report. You stay well, stay safe. Remember, it happens only in India. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Namaskar.
He's a doctor with a difference. He cures patients with a dash of dance. Meet 71-year-old Dr. Raj Dhariwal from Rajasthan's Jodhpur, fondly called the dancing doctor. Dr. Dhariwal's prescription includes a little shake of the leg, and he doesn't hesitate to teach a few moves to children himself. Dr. Raj says there's no better treatment than dancing to keep the body healthy.
मैं नियमित रूप से एक्सरसाइज बहुत सालों से कर रहा हूँ, इसलिए मेरा अभी भी 71 पे भी आज भी उतना ही एक्टिव हूँ जितना मैं 28 पे था.
Not surprisingly, his unique therapy has made him a social media hit and of course very popular with the patients in his care. Bureau Report, India Today.
Is Russian President Putin's life under a time clock? Well, according to Russian intelligence, Putin has only 2 to 3 more years to live. He is suffering from a severe form of rapid cancer. The Federal Security Service also said Putin is losing his eyesight and suffering from severe headaches. The FSB officials said that when appearing on TV, Putin needs everything written on a huge paper. He said, and I quote, "They are so big, each page can only hold a couple of sentences. His eyesight is seriously worsening, and his limbs are now shaking uncontrollably." The concerns about Putin's health are rising as he left many meetings for medical treatment. But amid these speculations about Putin's worsening health, Russian officials have a different story to tell. Russia's Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov denied these rumors about Putin's health. He said, and I quote, "I don't think that sane people can see in this person signs of some kind of illness or ailment." Many Russian newspapers also deny that Putin is suffering from cancer. But the UK intelligence claims Putin has rapid mood swings. They say that he trusts no one and is furious with his subordinates. Does Putin's illness change anything for the Russia-Ukraine war? It's been 4 months since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Russians have captured several areas of Ukraine. Meanwhile, many soldiers have lost their lives and many Ukrainian civilians remain displaced.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Everyone's busy finding what's trending. You're busy finding out why. India Today, for those who research before reacting.